What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined, as always, by my brother and the other great host of this show, Nick. And Nick, we're in the depths of the offseason. Training camp doesn't start for about 4 weeks or so. But first and most importantly, how are you, my good brother?
I'm great. I mean, the hockey season just ended. My team won. Congrats to me.
But no Florida Panthers talk on this podcast.
No. That's it. That's it. Stops and starts right there. But I mean, hockey's done. Basketball's over. Like these are the dog days of football summer, otherwise referred to as stinky ape summer. So I'm ready to just jump back into the football season. I think we have like 11 more Sundays. But until those 11 Sundays, Dean and I will be here.
Yeah, we will be. Make sure that if you guys are enjoying the podcast, that you like and subscribe. We're seeing a good uptick in subscribers. The shorts are doing well. The videos are doing really well. We greatly appreciate your guys' support. But before we jump into this episode, just wanted to make sure I reminded everybody to like and subscribe so that we can continue to put out this content. We got some good stuff for you guys today. 5 players that we feel like the Rams need to take a step forward this season versus 5 players who we feel like are going to likely regress. And then next week, we're going to do a 53-man roster projection, hopefully when the Rams add a couple of players. Maybe it's some of the veterans that we talked of last week. So that's all coming down the slate and inclusive of a couple of different topics that I'm sure we'll talk about in the near future.
Yeah, it's just a little spoiler warning. Matthew Stafford is on neither list.
Yeah, of course not. Yeah, I got a trivia question.
Right where he is.
Yeah, no, he's, number 1 quarterback in the NFC. Obviously, we're not talking about Jordan Love, Brock Purdy, Jalen Hurts. It's Matthew Stafford, maybe a top 5 quarterback in the league. Conversation for another day. But, Rams fans truly believe that, and they should. So for this episode, we wanted to talk about 5 players that we feel are going to need to take a step forward this season for the Rams to have extreme success, playoff success, potentially Super Bowl success in 24 and 25. So the 5 guys that we wanted to talk about that we feel like really need to step up in this season are Quinton Lake, Kobe Durant, Davis Allen, Nick Hampton, and Bobby Brown. And we're going to go into some reasoning as to why, and we're going to start with Quinton Lake. Because, Nick, I feel like Quinton Lake, he did an interview last year in the Rams' locker room in 2023, where he felt like he finally found his role in the star position. But he only played 40% of the snaps last year, and the majority of those snaps came at safety and some in the nickel after the Rams had tried out Kobe Durant there and was kind of unsuccessful. But his usage at a number of different defensive positions and eventual emergence as a potential solid nickel corner are reasons why we feel like that snap count could double in 2024, could go from 40% to 80%. I think 80% is that magic number as to where we like to see a lot of Rams defenders, especially starters. And then, the expectation too with McVay and Shula, I feel like he should be a vocal leader.
Yeah, I the vocal leader of the secondary. It may seem strange to some with the amount of veterans the Rams brought in and will continue to bring in, but it's a massive opportunity for Quinton Lake to make a difference in the secondary in 2024.
Yeah, I mean, he's that kind of guy where it's like, okay, has a good body of work, has played a number of different defense positions. We really like everything he has to say. He can be a vocal leader. Chris Shula and Sean McVay have publicly endorsed him. He was great on NFL Network when he gave an interview as of recent. So love the player, love the kid. And you know what, Nick, when they were coming out with like the faces of the franchise post the Aaron Donald retirement, Quinton Lake was there. But then you bring in all this veteran help on the back end, and you're curious as to how Quinton Lake fits in this equation. So 3rd year of his deal, the expectation is you take a leap in year 3, year 4, you're going to be potentially playing for a new contract. So I hope he's one of those guys that stays in the building, right? I'm just a big fan of the player, big fan of the guy. So I'm hopeful that kind of continues moving forward. The next guy,
just
go ahead.
One more thing I want to add on Quinton Lake before we move on to Kobe.
Please.
Just remember how important Eric Weddle was when they brought him in the Super Bowl run, and how being that vocal figure on the defense when you're all the way back there is so vastly important. I mean, we brought in the guy who's off the couch and he's making giant plays in the Super Bowl and reading the opposing offense. That is kind of what you have to bring to the table if you are Quinton Lake, if you want to play 100% of the snaps. And hopefully he moves into that into that role, into that transition well. But it's something that we did not see last year.
Yeah. I mean, and then I think it's a great point. And then you pivot over to a guy like Kobe Durant, right? Because Kobe's a guy that seemed like he had a ton of promise in his rookie season. He was a guy that Jalen Ramsey publicly endorsed multiple times. Like earlier on in his rookie season, Jalen Ramsey was really vocal about how Kobe Durant is as a player, how talented he is, how he's versatile, he can move around different positions. But I remember back in that rookie season when he had the most return yards in the NFL and his 3 interceptions during his rookie year. That was one of the bright spots to a very, very dark season. And remember, he earned the nickname Land Shark. Like he was, potentially going to be one of the faces.
My nickname for him, Slim Mamba, never really caught on. Trying to mix up Kobe's nickname and Kevin Durant's nickname, but
I mean, we love that too.
Yeah,
well, you love those kind of things, right? Because those are the kind of guys that you want in the building consistently. But it seems like his play dropped off a little bit last year as you brought in Akella Witherspoon. You brought in some more talent this year in Darius Williams and Cam Curl and Trey White. So Kobe's snap count actually doubled in 2023 from 2022. He played multiple roles in 23. He started outside, opposite of Akella Witherspoon, and then he transitioned over to the star. And it's going to be really interesting to see how guys like Darius Williams, who I mentioned, he's likely going to start outside. Cam Curl can really play that safety role really well in the star as a dime linebacker. He can move around. Trey White is a guy who's likely going to start outside and in sub packages in the big nickel potentially. So you got a lot of versatility in the secondary, but Kobe's a guy who you want to see take the leap, right? Because he showed a lot his rookie season, led the league in interception return yards, and it just seems like his play kind of dropped off as of last year but the problem is you're moving him around at different positions, right? He's not staying at one spot. So
he showed a lot his rookie season while having less opportunities, which is definitely concerning because you'd think that if you put them in those positions, you would see an uptick. The more you put him in, the more like big star opportunities he's going to get. And you're kind of like crossing your fingers on this one, being like, all right, well, we saw a decline last year. Like we kind of need you to get back to where you were in 2022. And if that's sticking with him in like one position as opposed to him like moving around, maybe that's what it is. Maybe, he's the best at the star, but we'll see. It's to be determined.
Yeah.
This may be the biggest one on the list of like need to take a step forward.
I mean, they're trying out a lot of different talent at the star position, as we talked about with Jordan, right? Russ Yeast was a guy that was mentioned a lot. Even Darion Kendrick was a guy that was potentially getting some snaps in OTAs at the star position. But like you got, guys like Cam Curl, right? You got guys like Quinton Lake who were vocal about it last year. So it's like, and versatility, a lot of these guys aren't drafted to be versatile. They're drafted to play one singular position. And the Rams' defense requires so much from a secondary perspective to be able to move around in multiple positions. And Kobe just might not be that guy. Maybe that's what we're starting to learn. So, I mean, that's kind of what you get as you kind of watch the tape with him. Is like you move him around so much. Some guys can only do so many things. And Jalen Ramsey, who originally owned that star position, was so big, so strong, so talented. You wanted him closer to the line of scrimmage so that he can make more plays on the ball, so that he can guard a bigger slot receiver, those kind of things. And maybe Durant just doesn't necessarily have that ability, which is why they're trying out different guys at that position, including Quinton Lake. So far we got Quinton Lake, we got Kobe Durant. The next one is Davis Allen. And Nick, I kind of wanted to keep anybody that's in their second year off of this list, but like Tyler Higbee, the major injuries that he dealt with, and then Hunter Long late of last year who had a major injury. Like I feel like he's going to be the best pass catching tight end on the roster on day one of the regular season, right? Because of some of the things that he showed as of last year. And Colby Parkinson, like it's great that he's here. I think he's going to be extremely helpful for this offense, but I feel like he's more of an extension of the duo scheme and the offensive line versus a field stretching pass catcher, right? I mean, that's kind of the difference between the two players. It's almost like a Tyler Higbee, Gerald Everett type situation.
I mean, we've never seen truly like remarkable tight end play under Sean McVay. It just hasn't happened. Tyler Higbee has been great in some situations. Everybody wants to talk about that Eagles game in 2020 when you had 3 touchdowns. It's like our favorite Tyler Higbee memory. But yeah, I do understand the thought process of wanting to leave off somebody that this is their second year. So it's like you're putting a little too much pressure on them to like make like a huge step up. But it is something that you want to see them explore that position creatively, which is something they haven't done. And you're hoping Davis Allen can be that, that jiggy, that piece that you can plug in there and, let the creativity run wild. I was really hoping it was going to be Hunter Long,
Yeah,
like,
well, because of the Jalen Ramsey trade. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. You're like, okay, well, what did we get? Like, oh, maybe this guy's like a sneaky, like a sneaky good secret character, but that just kind of wasn't the case.
Yeah, no, I wish it was the case, but it's definitely not. And I feel like with Davis Allen too, like if he can understand the offense to Tyler Higbee's ability and he can improve as an inline blocking tight end, he's going to be really, really tough to keep off the field. But we know that the Rams use 11 personnel at the highest rate in the entire league since Sean McVay has taken over as head coach in 2017. But I wouldn't be surprised if we see Davis Allen and we see Colby Parkinson on the field at the same time in 12 personnel, similar to what we saw in 2019 and 2020, especially in the red zone, right? Some red zone packages where you get both guys on the field, or even in situations where you're running that duo scheme and you want a little bit more bulk, a little bit more solidified blocking up front. And that's what Colby Parkinson can provide. So yeah, Davis Allen, definitely controversy in terms of the pick and him being on this list. But like if he takes a step up, you can get elite tight end play. And I think that that's exactly what the Rams need with the departure of a guy like, potentially Tyler Higbee coming off of a major injury, and even Hunter Long, who we feel like is not going to get any, real viable snaps.
Like the news is out that they really wanted to get a playmaking tight end in Bauer. So you really think that they're going to try to explore that. And hopefully, I mean, with Tyler Higbee's injury too, he's going to be on the field from the first snap of the offensive drive next year against the Lions, who took out Tyler Higbee. So maybe
I don't think he's going to be back at that point. It'll be Davis Allen.
Really?
Yeah, I mean that injury happened.
No, that's what I'm saying. Davis Allen will be.
That's what. Okay, that's what I thought you were saying. Yeah. So I mean, potential revenge there. I would love to see that. And then the next guy on this list, another guy in their second year, Nick Hampton. And this is solely based on the information that Jordan had shared with us, saying that he looks incredibly fast in OTAs. But Nick Hampton wasn't on my radar whatsoever as a potential impact player in 2024 until we had that conversation. But Byron Young going into year two and Jared Verse being a rookie, those solid rotational edge rushers to just ensure that guys like Jared Verse and Byron Young stay healthy and stay fresh is extremely key. Like I think back to guys like Obo, guys like Samson Ebukam, who were mentioned during this portion of the pod when we chatted with Jordan, and everybody just seems to remember offense in that 2018 game with Jared Goff and Patrick Mahomes, the 54-51 game. But what gave the Rams a 10-point lead in the third quarter of that game was a Samson Ebukam pick six on Patrick Mahomes. And then he trucked over Mahomes to score a touchdown. Like some of those rotational players, they make a huge difference, right? And I think back to guys like Justin Hollins and Obo in the 2021 season when Von Miller and Leonard Floyd were carrying the share of the load as starters, and you were able to kind of get over the hump there. So, I mean, rotational edge rushers are so key just to keep our guys fresh. And we know that they're young, they're inexperienced. So you want to be able to have as much power, speed, combinations coming off the edge as humanly possible. So
people who have been fans of the Rams brothers since our inaugural season in 2018 will know how close I was to buying a Samson Ebukam jersey. During that season, I was like, if they win the Super Bowl, it's color rush Ebukam, and that's all it will ever be. And they fell short, and then he went on to play for the Niners, and I think another team mixed in there. But the impact on that game was nothing short of remarkable, and something that we hope to see in Nick Hampton.
Yeah, I mean, look at these jerseys. How could you not want a color rush Samson Ebukam jersey? I'm surprised you didn't go color rush Clay Matthews back in the day.
The fact that I own a freaking Rams Clay Matthews jersey is an abomination. But go back to that picture of the jersey. Let me just geek out for 1 second. This is the one time the Rams blue on their jerseys actually matched the old school super dark blue on the helmets.
Yeah,
which is why this jersey always looked so fantastic. But yeah, That's all. That's all I'll have to say about that.
No, 2025 is the season where they can potentially introduce new uniform
They're
combinations.
Keep pushing it back. They don't want to.
Yeah.
They don't even like the bone. Every promotional image is blue or white, so they're not going to release another.
I got
Bone's the best, and Bone's the best.
This is the last Bone shirt probably that I'll buy, but I got Aaron Donald in Bone behind me, sitting there on my hanger over there. So it's crazy world we live in with the uniforms.
Hold on. I mean, just to speak of the Bones, the Kua,
come on,
Stafford, Woods, Jared. It's just so many Bone.
Nick went all in on the Bone.
Yeah, and the team said no thanks.
Yeah, they said no thanks. We're going with the modern throwbacks, which obviously we all love, and they won the Super Bowl in. So yeah, Bone. It's not a bad color. I thought it was a really good idea as an alternate, just because the Rams are so different in the way that they do things. But who knows if it gets phased out in time?
They'll do one game in the Bone next year. They'll do exactly one game.
So that's funny. And then the last guy we have on this list is Bobby Brown. So as I was just kind of like researching his history with the Rams so far, he's on year 4, right? Because he doesn't show up a ton. You see him in clips occasionally. You remember his substance abuse suspension that he had previously. But in the final year of his deal, he can be an extremely valuable role for this young front seven. And I said 80% of snaps is the magic number. If he could play 80% of the snaps in the Rams' nose tackle role, like this is a guy in that role who you should expect to command double teams from the center or the guard, which frees up another lineman to be able to be one-on-one with their blockers as a 0 or a 1 technique. And that's what the nose tackle is. And it depends on the look, depends on the formation that the Rams are in, the sub package. But that's the kind of thing that kind of player commands. And I don't feel like, even going back to the Dominican Sue days, you don't have a player even in the history of McVay's career that has been able to command that kind of attention outside of a guy like Aaron Donald. And we don't want to see Kobe Turner. Yeah, but as an edge rusher, I'm talking about.
I hear you.
Yeah, totally. But even Kobe Turner, having to rotate from 3 tech to nose tackle last season was a really big assignment. Obviously, Aaron Donald helped that a ton, but having plenty of fluidity and their ability to rotate and overall versatility in Chris Schul's new scheme with guys like Braden Fisk and Jared Verse and Kobe Turner and Michael Hoyt and Nick Hampton and Oshwan Mathis and Dejuan Johnson, these are all guys that can be good rotational pieces, but Bobby Brown should be a mainstay. He should be a starter. You think along the lines of a Michael Brockers type player, but he just hasn't stayed consistent. He's only played 27% of the defensive snaps in 2023, which I think is a reason why, we were looking for some veteran players as of last week, especially nose tackles who can come in and help, because I just don't have confidence that Bobby Brown is going to be on the field consistently. So,
right. That's that, just bringing it back to that 80% of the snaps. If you can get to that number with him, then you don't have to worry about having to bring somebody in. But I do have a trivia question for Rams fans. Who do you think played the most defensive snaps for the Rams in 2023? And I'll give you a hint. Unfortunately, he's not currently on the roster.
Initially, you want to say Aaron Donald. I know that that's not the answer, but think about it. It's a really good trivia question, and it's probably a guy that the Rams could bring back as training camp approaches if he doesn't sign with another team.
I thought it was Aaron Donald. Not? You don't have the answer here in the script.
Begins with an A. I want the fans to guess in the comments.
All right.
Yeah, make sure you guys guess in the comments as to who that player is. Trivia question for the fans. So that's the 5 players that we feel like really need to take a step up. The 5 guys that we feel like really need to take if they're going to potentially regress, that's just might be the reality of the situation. But 5 guys that we feel like are most likely to take a step back in 2024. And we're going to start with everybody's favorite, Tyler Higbee.
Right? Because we talked about the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire dun 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 sound before all of these.
Yeah, this is not a player that I think a lot of Rams fans. I think they're pretty much split on Tyler Higbee, right? Because the drops came into consideration last year, right? His ability to block is obviously really important, but that Kirby Joseph hit that led to Tyler Higbee's torn ACL and MCL, which I think is going to mean a delayed start to the season. but he's the all-time leading tight end in almost every major statistical category for a tight end in his career with the Rams. But like, he was really, really banged up late last year. Yeah. Right after signing his extension, which was unfortunate. He missed week 14 with a neck strain against the Browns, which almost went completely under the radar. And then he had that awful knee injury. And then in week 17, he also dislocated his shoulder against the 49ers, which, again, went almost totally under the radar. So tough as nails, loves contact. Players love him. Coaches love him. But I just expect at his age, he's going to be 32 as the season starts, and the injury history, plus the signing of Colby Parkinson and the draft pick of Davis Allen, I feel like it's natural that a guy like this starts to regress.
A lot of what he does so well is just understanding the scheme, understanding his role, and getting in front of people when he needs to. And he was the best at it last year. And there were games where he wasn't in, where there were games where he was in, and I was like, Tyler, you have to make that block. And then he missed a couple games, and I'm like, oh my God, Tyler, I am so sorry. Like I was so wrong. Like we need you here in these moments, because otherwise the running backs are getting like absolutely lit up, or like the play's not able to develop in time. So I don't, they have asked him to do a lot in the past. I think they're asking him to do a little bit less as time goes on. And I mean, I think we have him for what, like another 2 years after this? Didn't he just sign like a 3-year extension?
Yeah.
So unless it's retirement, he's probably on the team for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, one of the longest tenured players, him and Havenstein. Like, we'd love the guy, but I mean, like, just natural regression plus the signing, plus the draft picks, plus the Jalen Ramsey trade, like, all kind of.
Was he on the team when they were St. Louis?
Well, he was with the Jared Goff draft class, wasn't he? I think it went.
So he had to Goff, right?
Yeah, I think it went Goff, and then it went Higbee in round 4.
Yeah,
so he was.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. We're always talking about how Havenstein's the last one, and Higbee's been like running under our nose this whole time as a St. Louis Ram.
Yeah, Higbee's there. He's been there. And this next guy has been here for 3 years. He's going on year 4. Everybody's favorite talking point, Tutu Atwell, could have been Creed Humphrey. But now we got Steve Avila. His snap count, I thought, was so interesting. I looked at the game-by-game snap counts for Tutu Atwell. When Demarcus Robinson emerged after the Rams' bye week as the primary X receiver, and this is the reason why we're talking about Rome Odunze, it's the reason why we're talking about Devontae Adams in the past, he went from an average of 80% prior to the bye week, and then in week 13, it really, really dropped off. He went from 11.7% against Baltimore, 5.7% against the Saints, 6.5% of snaps against the Giants, which were all weeks 14 through 16. And both he and Demarcus Robinson are only under contract this season. So I think Stafford was extremely vocal about Demarcus Robinson and his progression. Jordan said he's aging in reverse. So, I mean, so far this offseason, I feel like Tutu's days are very much numbered in a Rams uniform.
I think there's more of a simpatico relationship between Stafford and Robinson, where a lot of their journey, people probably felt like that they were counted out.
Yeah.
And then they emerge here in Los Angeles with this like rejuvenation. And I just don't know if that is, something that will be consistent with Tutu. Like, I don't know if he will be continuously growing with Stafford. Are you back there, brother?
I'm back. Sorry about that. Yeah. Yeah, I know. You're totally right. I mean, I heard everything you had to say. I think that's perfectly accurate. And I think that that's, just a natural progression when you find an option that you feel like is better suited. Right. So, I mean, that's kind of what we're dealing with right now. Right. We got a, let's see if I get this.
Yeah. I mean, like, Robinson is great. Tutu hasn't really shown that he has been able to pop off like we hoped. And Robinson kind of has been stepping up in big situations. So maybe, I mean, Tutu might not even make it through the entire season, would be a prediction that I'm saying. Like, if there is a team that's kind of looking for somebody that the Rams can convince is somebody that can take it off the top, then yeah, sure. Like, let's dish him out. Let's see what we can bring in from him. And, hopefully we have more in Robinson left in the tank.
Yeah, 100%. And then the next guy that we wanted to talk about was Darion Kendrick. So I looked at Darion Kendrick's penalties in 2023. He had 11 penalties. Defensive pass interference had 5. He had 2 face masks. He had a horse collar. He had an unnecessary roughness. He had an illegal use of hands. He had defensive holding. 96 total yards of penalties, which is a full football field of penalties for Darion Kendrick. So it's ridiculous. Like, I feel like he's the odd man out. I look at the Rams' defense. I'm having a really hard time figuring out where Darion Kendrick is going to fit in. But perhaps he takes some snaps on the outside, opposite of Darius Williams in rotation with Trey White. But reports came out that they were trying him out at the star, as we talked about. I just don't think he's smart enough to play either position. So
no, the penalties last year, it felt like there's so many in the red zone. It was like, I think it was the Eagles game when they were in the red zone, like right before half, and it was him. And then also the 49ers game, the first one of the season, there was like a similar situation where the clock was about to expire and they get a penalty in the red zone. And it's just
Speaking of clock expiring, I don't know what's going on with my camera, but the other 2 guys that we're talking about too, Joe Noboom, 8th highest cap hit on the roster as of right now, behind Stafford, Cooper Kupp, Aaron Donald, Rob Havenstein, Jonah Jackson, Kevin Dotson, and Tyler Higbee. And yeah, we need depth on the offensive line, and Joe Noboom has shown that he can provide that. But like, let's keep an eye on the contract because he's due a pretty substantial amount of money on the 5th day of this league year this season, and has void years in his next deal in the next couple of years of his deal for the couple of years next is coming up. So I mean, like, that's another guy you got to keep an eye on. It just seems like he keeps getting beat out by guys who are hungrier, Alaric Jackson, Steve Avila, Kevin Dotson, etc. But like, I thought he was going to take over for Big Whit at left tackle, but it just, based on his versatility and the contract that the Rams gave him, but we were just wrong in that situation. So unfortunately, Joe Noboom is probably not going to be that guy, probably never will be that guy. And being the 8th highest cap hit on the roster is just kind of painful.
If you're going to allocate big money for somebody, you want them to, you don't want like younger dudes coming in and stepping up and being better than him. And that's just kind of consistently what's happening with Noboom. And you kind of just, it sucks because they saw potential in him and it has not come to fruition.
Yeah. It's pretty unfortunate. And then the last guy we got on this list is Ronnie Rivers, another odd man out type situation. Kyron Williams and Blake Corum are going to get a majority of the workload, as we know. Boston Scott was brought in primarily for special teams, but he's had much more experience at a high level. He's played at a higher level than Ronnie Rivers throughout his career. And also, Zach Evans was a draft pick last year. I thought he showed a lot of promise in college. But Ronnie Rivers is on a 1-year deal. I wouldn't be surprised if his workload totally shrunk, barring an injury to one of those top 3 guys.
Yeah, it's just somebody that we're probably not going to see as often when our room is just kind of continuously to keep growing.
Yeah. So then just to sum it up, these are our 5 players that we feel like need to step up. These are our 5 players that we feel like are likely to regress. And that's what we got for you guys today. 53-man roster projection is coming up. But yeah, this is that time of year where you're trying to figure out who's going to get better, who's going to get worse, who's going to make the roster, who's not, and all of the in-between. So that's where we stand as of right now.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to my man, fellow Rambassador Taron Killam, who I met IRL at the Noah Khan concert. That was just really cool to meet you, Taron, and I appreciate you just being a fan of the pod and being a fan of the Rams. It's nice to have some local LA people that care, that are in the industry like me.
Yeah. Shout out Taron, Nick and Taron hanging out at concerts, hanging out in the same industry. Friend of the pod, going to have him on soon. So shout out Taron. Shout out to everybody that's listening to the podcast. Apologies for the camera issues towards the end of the episode, but hope you guys enjoyed, and we will talk to you again soon.
Yes, we will. See you next week for the 53-man. Go Rams.
Cheers. Go Rams.